It wasn't too far back that I steam bent the side panels for this 11-passenger coach. And I've been letting them set and kind of cure on this form while I've been doing some priming on the undercarriage and wheels. Now I would like to take them off and see if I can get them fitted onto that body. Well, these panels are supposed to kind of fit the curve here, and then they have kind of a bowl shape on both ends. And I put these rockers on here a while back, but knew I would have to take them off to get this panel fitted so I can get in and fit this to the bottom face of this framework, both front and back. So all these irons for these rockers need to come off. And this may seem like it's one step forward and 2 steps back, but then we'd be losing ground, wouldn't we? But I wanted to get the placement of these bolts without the panel in the way. So after the panel is installed, everything should kind of go right back. So hopefully this is more of a case of 2 steps forward than only 1 step back. I knew I was going to have to take these off when I put them on in the first place. Well, this is the first panel I took off. This is the one I had marked for the right rear. This is where that knot defect was, that hopefully we'll be able to cut that out. Looks like we have a nice curvature here on the end, and also a nice bowl shape this direction as well. So that's all going the right direction. And then on the other end, it'll end up being the front. We have a nice curve that way. We have a nice curve this way. So hopefully can make that work. I think I'm actually overbent this way. I don't know if you remember when I took it out of the steamer, how overbent it was. Hopefully I can get that to flatten back out to match the frame on our side panel. Try to bring it up somewhat flush on the bottom, and then I'll do my adjustments on the top. Try to hold that in place there. I'll make sure I have enough length here, which looks like I'm okay. And on the back end, they seem to be long enough also. I'm extra long in here, but I expected that, because all this has to be fitted. But I'm going to try to bring this bottom edge somewhat close to the bottom of the framework, so I have minimal fitting to do on the bottom. So we're coming in toward the front. What we need to do, I'm going to have to pull that into place, but I've got to fit this to this joint here and bring this into place. And I'll end up trying to trim this to the same contour as this framework here. The back side is headed the right direction as well. I have to fit this joint here. Then all my final trimming is going to be on the top of these seat base frames. So I have these seats out of the way right now. And piece by piece, I'm going to see if I can't dry fit this into place and get some of my joint work figured out. Not going to bring it all the way into the place yet, but kind of get a feel for where this joint needs to be. It'll be right about in here. And somewhat of a scribe mark. If I hold my pencil flat, my lead is out actually a bit, which will leave me a little strong. You do a little stair step here and come out in this area here. And kind of follow this area kind of about in here somewhere. So it's going to leave us a little strong, which is good. We'll try to do the same on the front here. I have enough length. This one is a little more difficult to measure. I'll get a little better feel from the inside here. Yeah, it's one of those places that a short stubby pencil is kind of handy. Kind of tough to get in here, isn't it? And I get kind of a rough feel for where the top of this frame edges are going to be. And this is where it steps up to the rear seat. I'm not going to cut this exact yet. Make everything strong, but this kind of gives me the placement. So I'll take it off and see how close we are. So this is our joint on the front. This is the angle or the sweeping curve of our front framework. And that should be about 1/4 inch strong, blended into about here. And this is the top of our front seat frame. And this will actually be curved about here, somewhat. I'll have to put this in eventually when I get it installed. But this is all going to disappear above this joint. And this is our joint on the rear. And this is roughly the shape of our frame. We have a stair step in here about. I'll make that strong as well. So just kind of remove some of this excess and get it fitted a little bit closer, step by step, piece by piece. So this is the top of the second seat, and this is going to actually get curved out kind of like so. It has a little back curve on it, and that's going to get rid of that knot there. So with this joint fitted up and the same with the one in the back, I know what the height wants to be, and I have myself marked here for the seat frames so I know where it's going to be front to back. So this is going to be pretty close to where it wants to sit. So as I mentioned earlier, the curve of the panel is a little sharper than the curve of my framework. So I can bring it into the bottom frame on the top, and I still have quite a bit of distance here. So if I put a clamp on this and try to pull it in, it's going to flatten that board out and actually move it in relationship to the bottom edge of my frame. But I'm not sure I want to pull it all the way in just with one pressure point of that clamp, because I don't want to break this board. So I have some 1-inch scrap pieces here, and this is the frame pattern for the side body frames. So I'm just going to use these as a pattern to match those body frames, and it'll spread out that pressure point over more of an area. Try to spread that pressure point out as I bring that curve of the panel more in line with the curve of the frame. And this front seems like it's a little more overbent than the back is. So I want to do it in more than one place. And hopefully I can keep this from splitting right down the center. Well, it did pull it up there where it's going to fit pretty snug. That'll give me a little more accurate measurement that I can trim off this bottom and get that fitted a little better as well. So there's screws that go along the bottom frame here, of course, and this needs to be flush with the bottom frame, and I need to know what that measurement is because there's a 1-inch trim that goes here that covers up all those screws, so I need those screws to be in the right location when I put them up. So if I can flush trim this to my frame, I can get a better measurement of where these screws need to go. And with these side panels now a little closer to the right arc, that's going to give me a much better measurement. And I'd like to bring this in a little closer also, try to get a better measurement on that so I can trim this closer to the framework also. All at a taper, so it kind of wants to slide a little. Yeah, I'm going to put a little sandpaper behind this, give it a little more of a grip so it won't keep sliding off. That helps quite a bit. I'll stick it under this one also. Yeah, see, that brought it up much better. I can sand this off of my frame and get that fitted. So I'm not exactly flush yet. I have 1/16 or less, but I don't want to do that final touch until I have it glued and all my screws are in place. But this is going to allow me to know the placement of my screws. So the more we get this fitted, the more the goal is to keep it in this position. I'd like to mark out the inside of my framework because you know from past videos, when I have such a small area that I have to hit into the framework with my screws, I oftentimes will measure that from the back side and punch my holes so I know that my screws are just right where they need to be. There are a set of screws that come within this bottom inch, and they all get covered up with the trim. Then right down the center where this center framework is where the other screws go as well, and they also get covered up with a trim. And then on the top, on the framework that holds the seats, there are screws here as well, but they don't get covered with the trim. They actually have to be plugged. So I'm going to trace out where my framework is going to be on the inside of this panel. It's going to help me know where these screws go. This framework here is where that center trim has to go, and I want these screws to be right down the center. So all these marks are going to help me know just where this body panel needs to go back on. Work around all my clamps here. So this trim work from the center eventually has to curl up and match up to this point here. So eventually I will leave my screws, and this won't get a screw here. There'll probably be a screw back here, but when I make that transition, then I can't screw here, but I'll be screwing into this main frame here. So where the passengers step through, this has to get cut out, as I had mentioned before. And it comes down just to the top of that frame, and then it curls backwards underneath the rear of the seat that is in front of it. So it'd be really nice if I knew what that pattern was supposed to be, and I just might have an old one. Surprise, surprise. Well, this is the complete side panel framework off of a 11-passenger Yellowstone coach, and these are the cutouts that I'm referring to. See how they come right down to the top of this center frame. When I restored this coach, it was so rotted in the joint work, and actually in the front the main frame was broken, the body panel was not salvageable, these joints were all rotted out, so I ended up just replacing the whole thing. So I left it intact just for this purpose, to see what an original side panel looked like. So this is the rear seat, and we know that this is an inch taller than the seat in front of it. So I have some black material here that I'm going to put in that position and actually trace what that pattern needs to be. I'm going to put this at my 6-inch height. I'm going to be tall here. But this is going to tell me what that pattern needs to be. So that's going to be the pattern for the rear seat to the seat in front of it. Then the next two seats are actually uniform. So I'm going to make a pattern to match that style. It's going to be a little different than the rear seat. And when I use these, it's just going to be a pattern to get me in the ballpark. When I transfer it to my new coach, I will cut them a little bit strong, but that's going to be the pattern for this entry spot. So the front entryway, this whole side panel is in pretty bad shape. You can see how it was all rotted away. This curved frame here comes right up through here. The main frame was broken, but I can get kind of an idea what this needs to be. And then this has to come up and just meet that frame up in this area. And so I will kind of estimate that on the coach itself. But this is a little bit different style entryway than this last two that we did. I'm going to turn this over and show you where the screws and where those trim pieces are. See, this bottom trim is 1 inch, and then this trim that comes right down through the center is about 7/8. You can see where these screws need to be right in the center of that framework. There's screws that go into the top framework, and you can see a wood plug there and a wood plug there, there, there. And then the screws in the bottom that go into the main frame, you know, these are all maybe 3.5 inches apart, but they get covered with this trim here. And this is where I was talking about that the screws have to stop on the main frame eventually, because that trim has to transition to a point to meet the other trim. But I think you can see that we get closer to this curve, how the screws get closer and closer. We're maybe 3 inches, and we're down to about 2, and then we go about every 1.5 inches or so, just to keep this curve tight up against the frame. So this is the cutout pattern that goes to the rear seat. So we're going to be kind of in this shape here. Kind of like so. It comes down really close to this cross frame. But see, this is where it's going to get rid of that knot right there. And this is going to be for the middle 2 seats. Do a little more trimming on that. Maybe a little more like so. Wants to come up pretty close here. Again, I'll cut it strong and we'll fit it when we actually get closer to there. Something more like that to begin with. So the next step is going to be to kind of rough in these cutouts where the passengers step through, and then I think we can go ahead and get it permanently attached. Now, just as a kind of an FYI, we do have all our Borax Legacy jackets in. If you haven't received notice from Diane, you might give her another email back at david@engelscoachshop.com. Maybe check your junk mail. I think she has contacted everybody. But anyway, just kind of so you know. Anyway, next week I think we're going to get these put on permanently. Appreciate you coming along. Thanks for watching.